Hey, what's going on YouTube? This is Broman Clash right here, and tonight I want to do something a bit different, and it's something that I did with Boys in the Hood in New Jack City, and it's gonna be a three-way part analysis on the enemies, three enemy types, not including Dream Eaters, because essentially Dream Eaters are just like recruitable Heartless in Dream form. So in essence, they're like a yin yang kind of thing. But in the Kingdom Hearts realm, there are three types of enemies. One is Heartless, the other one is Nobody, and the third one is Unversed. Now, which one I'm going to tackle first? The one I'm going to tackle first is actually the Heartless. Now, why should I tackle the Heartless first and in this new analysis? See, the reason why I want to tackle the Heartless first is because, ironically enough, is this it's the first enemy that we see game release wise, and also chronological wise. Master Xehanort summoned Heartless, the Neo Shadows. Now, what do Heartless represent essentially? If you notice, essentially, what does the heart represent in all three of the enemies? Essentially, the heart is going to be like an extra part in this analysis, but it's going to be very pivotal. But the heart, when it comes right down in the sense of Heartless, see, look, the heart represents either a sentience or a sense of, what was it? Oh, a sense of, not only a sense of willpower, but also a sense of thinking. See, look, you know the old saying goes, do what your heart tells you or follow your heart. In this case, like what the Heartless are doing, they are like animals and an instinct, practicing on instinct. They're not exactly, thinking. They're not exactly strategy based. See, look, the body is lost, but the heart and the soul are still there. So essentially, the heart and soul, yeah, because the body is lost, but the heart and soul are still within the Heartless. So essentially, they are just beings that take up many different forms, but yet they're still essentially the same thing, darkness in a personified form. Basically, ranging from my favorite Heartless, the Storm Rider, which is a dragon-like Heartless that has attributes of lightning and wind, and that drops bombs, ranging from the Invisibles, which are humanoid Heartless, who have like an overall jet black color scheme with some purple highlights and carry around a sword. But the thing about these two Heartless are the fact that one is artificial, the other one is natural. See, natural Heartless, they have a black color scheme to them, which they are literally darkness in a form. While artificial Heartless, such as the one I mentioned about Storm Rider, they take up an aspect of the world that encompasses light. For example, in Land of the Dragons, whether they like dragons in Chinese mythologies, they're considered to be a very powerful, essence. They are essentially forces of nature that either bring great good or great evil, depending on either the nature of the dragon or what it represents. Anyways, aside from that, when I look at Storm Rider, it's basically a guardian turned to the dark side. And no, not the dark side as in like the Heartless. I'm talking about when you look at the heart contains like a dualistic essence to it, one of light, one of darkness. Now, Master Xehanort mentioned something about darkness and how the way both light and darkness play a pivotal role in terms of developing the heart. See, essentially, there are only an exceptional few are of pure light or of pure darkness, but everybody has like a balance or an imbalance of light and darkness, just like people have like a balance or an imbalance of light and good, no, of good and evil. But essentially, in order to understand the Heartless, you gotta understand what is darkness. See, darkness is considered, some people consider it to be like the primordial opposite of light. And light is considered to be like the primordial opposite of darkness. But at the same time, if you look at darkness, it can be used as the same thing for light. It can be used for both good and evil. And if you look at how the way people are afraid of darkness, that's essentially saying that they are afraid of that part of their heart that they don't even understand. Essentially, heartless are essentially like misunderstood. But at the same time, maybe the reason why they are like this is because they are driven by instinct to protect themselves, or to actually they want to be destroyed by the Keyblade so they can not only find their nobody, but to also be rid of what they call an existence of torture. And that is actually going to be a part of Unversed. But Heartless and Heart, essentially the heart plays like a pivotal role in all three. See, the heart contains emotion, contains willpower, and it also contains sentience. But then at the same time, when you look at the heart, there's also the body and the soul. And then memory comes into play, but that's a bit of like a sketchy kind of thing, because memories can also be manipulated to have the heart believe in what it wants to believe, or for other people to believe in what they want you to believe in. Essentially, the heart can be manipulated. And how does all this tie in with the Heartless? Because remember, Heartless are driven by instinct. And as Sayax mentioned before in Kingdom Hearts 2, when it was nearing at the climax, he said the Heartless ally themselves with whoever's the strongest. So essentially, Heartless, they are essentially beings that seek out leaders because they are lost. Heartless are just essentially lost hearts. See, just because somebody says they're heartless doesn't necessarily mean they lack a heart. Because essentially, if you defeat a Heartless, a captive heart is released. If you notice, like if you defeat a Heartless, a heart is released. That's essentially saying that, look, hearts, they like Heartless, they are just like keepers of hearts, more than likely. Say if a person loses their body, but yet their heart and their soul are still there. Essentially, your soul, like how the way the soul is kind of like a metaphysical essence of willpower. That's the thing. The Heartless are a manifestation of emotion and willpower. They lack the sentience that the heart portrays. Now, how does this tie in with Nobodies and Unversed? See, look, they play off on the three, like the three wise monkey, the three wise monkeys, see no evil, hear no evil, and speak no evil. See, if you think about it, like Heartless have eyes and they have mouths, but some of them lack ears. So essentially, and you know how the way ears also process information. This is just going off on a tangent, but in case you might want to get it. But if you think about it, see, look, how the way ears also process information, because if you hear information, you also tend to go to it and want to understand more. See, Heartless are essentially somewhat like the same thing, because they ally themselves whoever the strongest, or whoever has not only the strongest heart, but also the strongest willpower. Now, how does Heartless and willpower come together? If you think about it, the body is lost, but the willpower and the heart is still there. One notable example is Sora, when he transformed into a Heartless. His body was lost, but his willpower and his heart stayed the same. Essentially, he didn't go out there trying to harm people, like, shadow sneaking and all that crap. He essentially went out to find his friends. That was his willpower and his heart telling him to do that. But he didn't have a body. That was the thing. See, Heartless, in essence, they are, they Heartless are considered to be like animals, which is kind of ironic considering the fact that they are very elaborate while nobodies are just pretty bland. And the more monstrous the heart is, the more monstrous how the Heartless looks, the stronger the heart, or the stronger the darkness. But put it into this context, if the Heartless is considered to be strong, that means the darkness is also strong as well. But in darkness, you can realize your own willpower. It's more of about understanding than it is about willpower. And if your heart is strong and if your soul is strong, then you realize that, hey, this is what gives me a purpose. And that's a great thing. But at the same time, people tend to gloss it over because they say like Heartless are just like I said before, they're just beings that go off on instinct. They're not beings that go off on, how shall I say, sentience. They think, plan like nobodies. Just like what Yin Sid did, like Yin Sid talked about. But at the same time, Heartless are just, like I said before, emotion and willpower, but with no body or without a guidance. And when it comes right down to Heartless, they essentially go with emotion. And how does this tie in with the Keyblade? See, Leon mentioned that the Keyblade is not only the greatest weapon that can defeat the Heartless, but it's also a beacon that can lure them over there. But at the same time, there's also been Keyblade wielders that can actually use Heartless. One notable example is Master Xehanort. Now, my question is this. If Heartless are destined to seek out, Keyblade wielders because of their hearts and they're strong, how come a Keyblade wielder can actually control Heartless? It's because if you understand the darkness, then Heartless, they're not essentially scary. In fact, the Heartless are essentially just a part of one's own being. Just like when you have a heart, you have emotion, you have light. But when you're heartless, you tend to be cold. You tend to have darkness. And you tend to rely more on instinct than you do on sentience. No, not sentience, my bad, because you tend to rely more on intelligence. But oddly enough, when you look at Heartless, they're not animals. In fact, they just seek guidance. That's the thing. If you go on by willpower alone, you won't necessarily win. And this is the opposite of the nobody. And I'm going to get on with that on the next part. The Heartless are essentially just emotion and willpower put together, like the heart and the soul. But the body is destroyed. That's just it. Now let's get on with the nobodies. And don't worry, the next part is going to talk about the nobodies. And hope you have a great time. And see you on the next part. Okay? Later.